Hello, I'm Gary Vasey with Commodity Technology Advisory, and you're watching another episode of CTRM Radio, a podcast from Commodity Technology Advisory about everything CTRM. Data is the currency of trading. As markets evolve from EPEX's 15-minute settlement intervals to the rise of algorithmic trading in power, speed and precision in handling data are now business critical, and firms that can act quickly and confidently on reliable data win in competitive markets. So I asked Phil Lowe of Zema Global and Mark Chalmers of Value Creed for their thoughts on this topic, and this is what I found out. Welcome to CTRM Radio, gentlemen. Let's start by getting an introduction. Mark, can we start with you quickly?
Sure. I'm Mark Chalmers. I'm the commercial director for Value Creed, covering EMEA and APAC. So my background in ETRM has been with Ion Group, with SAP, and now also with Value Creed more on the services side as a system integrator.
Good. Phil, what about you?
Hi, I'm the VP for Sales for EMEA and APAC at Zema Global, and been in the with Zema about 5 months. But previously, I was with London Stock Exchange in various commodities and energy roles, both in Europe and China and Hong Kong.
Great. Thank you very much. Well, let's get started. Obviously, we live in an era where there's all kinds of data, and data has become extremely important and even of a competitive and strategic advantage. So maybe we can start by looking at why data has actually become such a defining competitive factor in today's commodity trading environment.
Yeah, I mean, well, I guess every business is trying to be data driven, and at the end of the day, the decisions they want to make, the faster they can get to those, the better it is, which then means that they need to have the data available, um, accurate, and in a way that is, timely and also not siloed. And I think that's really where, that's coming in, or at least the importance of what, Phil and I are going to talk about on this session comes in. But I mean, especially with power markets in particular moving to shorter and shorter settlement times, but all of the energy markets, to be honest, are getting more complex when it comes to data. So the questions around how do you manage that to make sure that you've got the right decision-making information in front of you becomes more and more critical.
Phil, what do you think?
Yeah, look, I couldn't agree more. I think we put it in terms of that there's essentially a complexity crisis happening, where there's an explosion of data that is available, both structured, unstructured. Vast amounts that is coming made available, and it's causing a challenge for everyone, not just those that are looking at the data, but traders and all the downstream people that need to look at that. I mean, it's new asset classes, multitude of risk factors that feed into that. So, along with compliance and regulation as well. So there's a whole plethora of challenges that people are identifying about data today.
Yeah, it's probably one of the most challenging times in my career, and I'm reaching the end of mine, so I've been around a bit. Obviously, we've already heard from you that the markets are speeding up, particularly electric power moving to almost real time in essence. And of course, that means data also needs to be presented more or less in real time. So, what sort of challenges, let's address that. What sort of challenges are firms facing as a result of this sort of speed up of the trading side?
Yeah, as you mentioned, the near real time for energy, it seems that the commodities and energy space has always sort of been a laggard to the financial world, and it's really sort of catching up now. And I think the technology has to do the same too. So the industry is looking for better solutions. And if you remained in the sort of siloed, disconnected point-to-point solutions, they're going to definitely struggle. And that's what customers are telling us, that they need a better vision to follow and better integration across the board.
Mark, the same
Yeah.
thing?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say the same. I think that if you had to pick one biggest problem in ETRM when it comes to the data side, it probably is silos, and actually breaking those through. But really the volume, the location of where they are, and the complexity of removing it and integrating into other tools. I think that's it because you need some, at some point you're going to have some kind of analytics tool. And I don't know any of our clients that isn't building one or hasn't built one already. And having that as a way of again driving those decisions is critical. But then that data is probably coming from dozens of different sources. How do you actually get it all into one place? And then once it's all in one place, who's actually managing and what is the most cost effective and easy way of making sure that the data flows, that all of those integrations are all working well, that the tool is working well. Obviously there's cost, there's a competitive advantage, with Zemo where you can bring a lot of those, even internal models into the tool. So that makes our lives a lot easier when we're helping our clients with this. But there's still going to be some kind of data integration across multiple systems because, if a number is wrong in SAP, then, where did that come from? Is that it could be literally anything. So all of those kind of challenges that people have in terms of setting up and then managing this in a cost-effective way, I think is kind of it.
Yeah. And so, that brings us to if Zema brings in sort of vital market and fundamental data and value, Creed is about connecting that with other enterprise data, then how does that combination actually change the way that these firms operate?
Well, I mean, one thing is that in some ways it's kind of non-negotiable because, what we offer on top of the Zima platform is, a managed service that essentially looks beyond just one system. And you have to take that view because, the data that's going through, well, into Zima is going to populate all the way down into SAP and accounting systems and various other things. The idea of having a disconnected approach to managing that, is pretty much a catastrophe. But then also when it comes to support, I think as Zima, goes down the path of increasing complexity of the tool, more and more clients will want advice on best practice on, how do they set up all of these things. And that is something that we can provide as experts in the energy space and in the ETRM space. So it's kind of a natural partnership, I think, that we have with Zema. And before we had the partnership, we were doing a lot of the work anyway with most of our clients. So it kind of flowed quite naturally.
And where's the ROI showing up when clients invest in that integration across the full data lifecycle?
And there's a big one in terms of, the cost of poor decision making for one thing. The cost of being, you imagine you're unable to close accounts, for instance, because, numbers are showing up wrong or something along those lines. Those are quite massive. But again, the way that we have tried to focus our offering is going heavy on highly qualified, very strong resources that are in offshore basis, which is a much more cost-effective way of dealing with this because you need some serious expertise, and having that on site or in-house is quite often, it could be a good solution, but it's very expensive. So if you're doing this at scale, and again, as the complexity of this and the scale of all of the systems and processes and data that need to be fed with this increases, then those challenges are only going to multiply. So that's where the ROI sits. It's in making sure that things are done properly, but then also that it's done in a way that is cost effective.
So, Phil, obviously there's a lot more data around and things are speeding up. So it's not only about delivering the data on time, but it's about ensuring the quality of that data. How does Zema Global approach that problem?
So, we get customers saying, "Oh, we can do this ourselves. We can bring in lots of data ourselves, and we'll put it into a big fat data lake, and we can draw down that data from data lakes." And the problem with this is that it's ungovernable. Like people have this, what we're hearing is there's kind of like a mushroom effect where people draw down some data from the data lake and someone else does the same and someone else does the same and they put it into their individual models. And suddenly you've got several models that are all doing different things. And no one knows who's taking what data. So there's a compliance and governance factor to that as well. So, by taking a consolidated feed as we provide, like a backbone to your organization, if you like, this allays us a lot of those challenges. And we like to think that today with AI and what people want to do with AI, people want to have decision AI data, ready data. And in order to have that consolidation across all the different types of data is a challenging concept in the first place. And so we're using ourselves as a kind of decision infrastructure. So as a backbone to that organization. And once you've got that right, that can feed other systems. So that can go down to other ETRM systems. It can go into your risk teams. It can go to your compliance teams, and indeed can go up to your traders where they like to do their own coding and create their own. But it's on verifiable and solid data, because ultimately the best data wins in this game, and that's a really key factor.
Right, and again, I'll ask you, what do you think the impact of having good quality data paired with that degree of integration in terms of decision-making speed and accuracy on the part of the traders?
Yeah, but I mean,
Yeah,
it's the ability to take a holistic view when you're making a decision. That's, I mean, what it comes down to. But the complexity of that in um, uh, it sounds easier to do that than it is. So you get a competitive advantage from Zema and having all of the pricing data and so on in one place. Again, you get benefits from being able to bring the models directly in there, certainly from a compliance standpoint, as Phil was saying. But you need to, if that is a kind of standalone, doesn't really give you that ability to make those decisions. You need to integrate it across your whole trading system, or ecosystem rather, so that you're able to power not just the traders. I mean, the traders are very important. Obviously, with algorithmic trading, that's going to be entirely data driven, but also decision making in the firm, all sorts of additional decisions that need to be made, need to be fueled by this types of data. And again, taking a holistic view, the first step is getting Zema in to aggregate some of those points, and then it needs to be integrated to the rest of the ecosystem.
Good. Phil, anything to add on that?
yeah, we had a strategy 5 months ago when we bought a company called Sequant. And it really takes us from providing just the data, the AI ready data, to the next level of providing the analytics of that as well. So if you imagine the flow from that decision infrastructure feeding into an energy analytics platform is an incredibly powerful concept, and actually no one else is doing that within the industry. So as Mark was saying, you've got your models and your analytics on there. You can feed your own data into that. So there's not just your proprietary data. So there's commingling of that decision-ready data in as well as your proprietary, and that's a very powerful proposition, and to feed into the other downstream systems as well.
I guess the proof is always in the pudding. So can either of you or both of you share examples of how this has helped firms gain better visibility or reduce their risk exposure?
I could probably comment on a major oil and gas distributor. They're using they have their pricing refreshing every 5 minutes for all their retail gas shipments. And it's just having that ability to be able to be that responsive has made a significant difference to how they operate.
Mark, do you have any examples?
Actually, we have a similar situation with one liquids provider where, again, the data landscape is just so complex for them to manage. And it starts with just purely by virtue of all of the things, all of the operations they run, the different types of data that they have. But we have essentially come in as a holistic provider who's able to do everything from setting up the curves in Zema through to sorting out other data sources and other systems, integrating it throughout the entire enterprise. And now we're also then building on top of that, the kind of data lakes and analytics that they need to interrogate some of those things. And that then means that the management team and so on are able to make decisions across trading far, far faster than they were before.
Very good. We've already mentioned AI, which is something, of course, that everybody's interested in these days, and everybody's looking for the benefit of, and also looking forward to the deployment of. So how do you guys see AI taking this whole area to the next level? Mark?
We're waiting for the big shift to AI and ETRM, I'd say still. So it's still very much there's a lot that can be done with RPA, with kind of bots that can, simplify processes and so on. But for now, true AI is a little bit further away, I would say, for ETRM. Where it is coming in, though, is in the data layer in terms of some tools that are able to, select data and so on. But the most important piece that you need to do to actually be AI ready is making sure that your data is set up correctly and that the appropriate processes and data is exposed and not in some silo that you can access. So again, that integration piece becomes really critical. And again, to Phil's point about, not letting, you don't want to totally open it up to everything. You want to have the right controls in place, which is, partly what Zima is able to offer with a lot of this. But having that in a way that is discoverable yet controlled is going to be critical to actually having AI once it's ready. Once there are tools that are really going to be transformative to the industry, that's going to be necessary. So the people who are taking the steps now to actually make sure that this is set up are probably going to be the ones that have the competitive advantage as well when AI comes in.
Yeah, that completely agrees with the research that we've done on AI and energy and commodities. We put out a report recently that you're probably aware of, and we discovered that there's still something of well, AI is used in all kinds of ways at the moment, but it's not really taking over decision making. Let's put it that way. And I think there's some way to go in terms of developing trust and data really does play a big role in this whole equation. So, Phil, what are you guys doing in terms of
Yeah,
AI?
so
And
I'll give you two examples,
yeah,
Gabby. I think the first example is, as much as we hate to admit it, but sometimes data fails. Something happens, it wasn't collected properly, or it missed, or it filed, or whatever. Sometimes it just doesn't happen the way that we like it to. And when that gap appears in the data, we've always gone back to some sort of traditional method of trying to structure it and trying to
right.
fill those gaps through interpretation or whatever. And that's a really good example where AI can come into play because they can look back deep in the history, and they can look at the scenarios and they can start filling in those gaps much faster than we ever could. So there's a really good example of what data where AI can play a part. My second point is, you know, I talked about Sequant earlier. We have a lightning mode in some of our with our model building in Sequant. And what this does is, AI is great at looking at historical models and historical data and seeing the anomalies and the similarities in that data. And what lightning mode does, it takes only the changes that you've implemented, they're looking at back on a model, and will speed up the pace in which you can have and execute understand the model. So a model might take a couple of hours, even sort of overnight to run sometimes. Well, you can now actually get that same with similar kind of accuracy, not 100% accuracy, but with a similar type of accuracy, but in a much shorter time. And as we've talked about with data being, we need it faster. There's more of it. We need more structure to it. But having those answers is going to be much more vital. So there's a really good example.
Another question I would ask then would be, what about data validation? Because that's another area. It's not just accuracy, but validating that the data coming in is fitting into certain criteria that you would expect it to. My understanding is that's a key part of data management. Can it be used there as well?
I mean, yes, I mean, we're looking at all aspects of where we can, speed up that process. Because at the end of the day, the less hands we have of it and more computer and work doing the work, the solid and more trusted it will be. Um, and so it's just a matter of training the models in order to make that happen. And that's very much part of our strategy of getting our data decision infrastructure ready for AI.
If you had to leave the audience with one piece of advice on how to future-proof their data strategy, what would it be?
We touched on it at the top end of this session. That managers and leaders today have this once in a career opportunity to really revolutionize how they use data and take data on. And if they continue to look at individual programs or silos, they're going to really struggle in how data is moving and how quickly it's moving. And so if there's one takeaway that I would urge leaders to look into is how they can look at a whole system all the way through from data collection all the way through to data use and downstream in an ETRM and CTRM systems. That would be to get a consolidated platform that will give you AI data ready solutions.
What about you, Mark?
So I think the main thing to take away is that, within the enterprise, there are probably only a handful of people who really understand how to use data to drive the business forward. And what you want to use those people for is some of the higher value tasks, like strategy, like deciding what should be coming out of the analytics frameworks, what information do each area of the business need, instead of the management, the integration, the sort of day-to-day type of work that can be handed off to companies like ours. Because we found, within data teams where you want maybe 8 out of 10 people to be doing the really high value reporting and so on, and 2 people doing the support, you would instead have the inverse, and you'd have 80% of people who are just managing and trying to keep the integrations working and supporting all of that. And then only 2 people are actually pulling the actual value out of the system. So actually having that kind of division, I think, is something that, hopefully people can take away from this.